Hey, what's up, everybody? So I'm coming to you this morning with another 2020 mid-year top 10. This is the final division, the 147-pound welterweight division, my number one division in boxing right now. Nothing has changed. Nobody dropped out, and nobody new moved in. We did have a couple guys fight in the top 10, but the coronavirus has pretty much taken out all fighting in this division, as many divisions has, but especially the welterweights. These are the biggest fighters, so it's tougher to get them fights because they want crowds and stuff. But let's jump right in. We'll get into some of that. Let's jump right into the top 10. And like I said, nobody dropped out. So let's move straight into our three-way tie for 10th. All these guys are still tied for 10th. Let's take a look at them. We start with former world title challenger Thomas Delorme. Well, Delorme had a fight scheduled for April on Fox Sports against Jamal James for the vacant WBA interim world title. That fight got scratched due to the coronavirus. Now the fight looks like it's back on. I don't think it's been 100% finalized for August 8th, but it looks like that's going to be when these two guys lock horns. Should be a good one. Delorme has pulled off upsets over the last couple years. He fought to a draw with Jesse Vargas when he came in a big underdog. Came in the underdog against undefeated prospect Terrell Williams last year and soundly beat him by a decision. He's a solid, good veteran. This is probably the best role of his career in terms of facing and defeating top competition, and now he has another chance to do it against Jamal James. Personally, I think he's going to lose this fight, but I do think he stands a chance. James is a good fighter, but Delorme's got more of a resume. So we're going to see how this one goes, but August 8th is what it's looking like. Delorme versus Jamal James for the WBA interim world title. Next up, and still tied for 10th, is former world title challenger Josecito Lopez. Well, Lopez, haven't heard anything about him and what he's doing yet. He's currently the WBC's number 9 contender right now. He's with the PBC, so and this is a PBC dominated division. Now, I'm just going out on a limb here and predicting that I honestly believe there's a very good chance we see Lopez match up against Sean Porter. Now, I haven't heard any rumors of that, but here's why I'm saying that. Sean Porter's currently the number 1 ranked contender in the WBC. He's going to want to mandate that position to get himself the winner of Errol Spence and Danny Garcia, by early next year. Nobody seems to be lined up to want to face Sean Porter. So I believe that all the top guys are going to pass on Sean Porter. I believe Terrence Crawford's not going to fight Sean Porter like everybody wants, myself included. But once that happens, most of the guys that are behind Porter in the rankings, they have stuff going on, or they're not going to want to fight Porter. There might be one, maybe two guys ahead of Lopez that might do it, and I think there's a chance that the WBC would move Lopez up, and I think there's a very good chance we could see these two guys locking horns late this year. If that happens, I'm picking Porter to beat Lopez, but Lopez getting another name is the goal. If he doesn't get that guy, I think he's probably still going to fight a solid PBC type fighter and move forward. So we'll see what happens. Next, and also still tied for 10th, is former 2-division world champion Jesse Vargas. Well, Vargas returned at the end of February. He actually returned to the welterweight division. We knew he was going to fight Mikey Garcia. Now, the question, though, was, would he stay here, win or lose? Well, Jesse fought his ass off. He won the first few rounds, but then Mikey was timing him, caught him cold in the 6th round, hurt him badly, and second half of the fight was pretty much Mikey Garcia's fight. He outworked him and seemingly outboxed him. It went to the scorecards, somewhat close, unanimous decision. No arguments there that Mikey was the better guy on that night, but Vargas fought hard. But I think it was proven that Vargas is a 154-pounder now. He's not ranked in any governing body in the welterweight division. He is ranked at the super welterweight division. So personally, I think Vargas will return to 154 and say goodbye to the welterweight division. And I think he's going to compete at 154. He's talked about possibly fighting Liam Smith, former champ at 154. They're both with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. So I think something along those lines is going to happen. If not, he'll probably just stay busy, come back at 154 and get a win. But we'll keep you posted and see what he does. Next, and still number 9, is the former 140-pound champion Sergey Lipinets. Well, Lipinets is currently the IBF's number 3 contender. He is supposed to fight the undefeated Russian and number 1 contender Kudratio Akhmadalov or whatever, some Russian, fucked up Russian name. He's supposed to fight that guy. They had their fight scheduled for May, and it got pushed back due to the coronavirus. Now they're talking about September. This is going to be for the IBF's interim world title. This is a big fucking fight right here, guys. First, it's PBC, so you're going to be able to see it. Lipinets is a solid-ass fighter, but the reward for the winner is why this is such a big fight, because the winner of this fight is going to be the mandatory challenger to Errol Spence's title. Errol Spence is likely facing Danny Garcia next, and that would mean that the new interim IBF champion would be next to fight the winner of Errol Spence and Danny Garcia. So that's big, because that means first half of next year, this guy's getting a shot at one of them, whoever wins, and then, and if they don't, they become the IBF champion. So Sergey Lipinets, big fight coming up. I haven't seen this undefeated Kudratio Russian guy. I haven't seen him. Doesn't have the resume of Lipinets. I think Lipinets is going to beat him. I'm going by decision, and he'll be the interim champion and line himself up for a world title shot next year. Next, and still number 8 now, is former 4-division world champion Mikey Garcia. Well, Mikey returned at the end of February, and it might have been his biggest win. It was definitely his biggest win, above 140, because he's only fought twice. He needed to beat Jesse Vargas at the end of February. After he was coming in off of almost a year layoff after getting his ass whipped against Errol Spence in 2019, and he needed a big win. He went in, he got it. He was getting beat the first few rounds, but what he was doing was timing Jesse Vargas, and it was a very smart move, because he was timing him. He was landing shots, but he was giving away rounds to time him perfectly, and he did that. In the 6th round, he hurt Vargas bad, knocked him down, hurt him badly, almost stopped him, but allowed him to swing the fight in his favor, and he pretty much outboxed and outworked Jesse Vargas the rest of the fight. So big win for Mikey right there. Now, what does he have coming up? I still believe he's the top option for Manny Pacquiao's next fight. I really do. I think Manny's going to look at him as not as much of a threat as some of the other guys. That could be a mistake. Mikey compared himself to Juan Manuel Marquez recently, and one of his guys did, and I fully believe that Mikey has that potential. My thing is, does he have the ability to be as aggressive as Juanma was, or Juan Manuel Marquez was? That's the thing, is Marquez was an aggressive counterpuncher. Is Mikey going to be able to be as aggressive as Juan Manuel Marquez was, and can he beat Pacquiao? I think there's a chance. He's got to get the fight first. Now, again, I think he's the favorite, but if he does not get that fight for some reason, it depends on what Pacquiao decides to do other than that. If Pacquiao decides to fight Danny Garcia, Mikey might end up fighting, whoever. Really, it's kind of up in the air. Pacquiao decides to fight Errol Spence, then I think Mikey would line himself up for a showdown with Danny Garcia. So just really depends on what Pacquiao's doing. He's in the sweepstakes for that, and it's just really going to depend on what Pacquiao decides. So we'll see. Next, and still number 7, is former world title challenger Yordenis Ugas. Ugas returned in February on a PBC card, dominated little-known Mike Dallas Jr., stopped him in 7 rounds impressively, and now is lined up for the WBA regular title. There was talks of him fighting then champion Alexander Besputin, but Besputin, I think with some positive failed tests, he was stripped of the world title, of the WBA regular title, and now Ugas has been ordered by the WBA to challenge for the vacant belt against number 6 contender Abel Ramos. Ugas is number 1 in the WBA. I think he's going to come into this fight a strong favorite. I think he's going to beat Ramos by a decision and become the WBA regular world champion. He's a widely avoided guy, so winning a world title, even though it's a secondary world title, is a big deal for him, and it's going to lead to bigger fights, hopefully, in 2021. Next, and still number 6, is former 2-division world champion Danny Garcia. Well, Danny is being rumored that he's going to be facing Errol Spence Jr., but that is only if Manny Pacquiao doesn't decide on facing Danny Garcia. Many people, myself included, feel that Danny is number 2 on Manny Pacquiao's list and very close to number 1. A lot of people feel that Mikey Garcia is the number 1 guy, and then Danny's number 2 on that list. So if Manny decides to go with the Danny Garcia fight, it would be huge for him. If not, he's going to go after Errol Spence Jr. Now, what do I think happens? I think Danny's got a puncher's chance against Pacquiao or Errol Spence, to be honest. I really do. But I think both guys would beat him by a decision if I had to pick. But that doesn't mean Danny's not going to be in the fight, and it doesn't mean it's not going to be a good fight like Danny usually provides. So we'll see what happens after Pacquiao decides what he's going to do, and we'll see if he lands the Errol Spence fight, because that would be huge if he gets it. Next, and still number 5, is former 2-time welterweight champ Shawn Porter. Well, Shawn Porter, you know, of course he wants every fight. He's a WBC's number 1 contender, but they have not mandated him to fight Errol Spence in a rematch. Errol Spence is being allotted an optional defense first, and it's very likely that he's going to face Danny Garcia from what a lot of the rumors are. But that doesn't mean that fight's locked in and solid going to happen. If he does not get this fight, if he doesn't get a big name like Pacquiao or one of those guys, which I don't think he will, I think there's a chance he gets the Terrence Crawford fight. But that's one of those things I'm going to believe when it happens. I'm not going to believe that Bob Arum and Top Rank are going to work with the PBC in a major fight like that until they actually do it. So I hope they can get that fight done. I think that'd be great for Crawford's career. I think it'd be good for Porter right now. And it'd be good for 2020 to have a big-time welterweight title fight. But, again, they got to agree on it and work it out. And right now, I just don't think it's going to happen until it actually happens. So we'll see. But I also think there's a very good chance, as I said earlier, that he mandates his position in the WBC to line himself up for a title shot in the first half of next year. And he does that, and I think there's a good chance he fights Josecito Lopez, as I said. If he does, I think he stops Lopez in the late rounds or gets a clean decision and pushes forward towards another world title shot. Next, and still number 4, is former unified champion Keith "One-Time" Thurman. Thurman has been calling everybody out, but I really don't think he wants to face a top-tier welterweight in his first fight back after losing to Manny Pacquiao last July. It's been over a year since he lost that fight, and I just don't think he wants to go straight in after what could be close to a year and a half off. I don't think he wants to go straight in to a fight with, with any of them. He's calling out Crawford. He's calling out Danny. He's calling out Manny Pacquiao for a rematch. I don't think he wants any one of those guys. I think it's just all talk right now. And he's really going to focus on them next year. So I could see him facing somebody along the lines of like an Andre Berto, who's in the PBC, guys like that. But I definitely don't think he's going to get a huge name in his next fight or a huge fight. So, but we'll see. Next, and still number 3, is WBA Super Champion, the Pac-Man Manny Pacquiao. Well, Pacquiao, I think, has 4 options on his list that he's considering right now. The first of those, I think, is Mikey Garcia. I think that'd be the more logical and most beatable fighter, maybe the least likely to knock him out and catch him on something. So I think that's where he's going to go with it. Mikey's coming off a nice performance over Jesse Vargas, so I think it would make sense for Pacquiao to face Mikey. The Danny Garcia, I think, is his number 2 option. Another good fight. I really think it's a good matchup. I think Pacquiao is the favorite going in, and I think he would beat him if he chooses Danny. Third option, I think, for Pacquiao, but it might be his best option, is a showdown to unify belts with Errol Spence Jr. Now, logically, if you're looking at it on a blank sheet of paper, you're saying Errol Spence is probably the favorite in this one. But Manny would have way more experience in the bigger fights. Plus, Errol Spence is coming off that big accident. He hasn't fought in what would be over a year as well going into it. And we don't know what the effects of that accident will do to the psyche of Errol Spence. So this might be the perfect time for Manny to close that age gap by facing Errol Spence. Coming off of a year layoff, what it would be at that time for Spence, it might be the perfect option. So we'll see. I don't think he's going to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he chooses Errol Spence. And then the fourth option for Pacquiao right now that I think is somewhat realistic is Terrence Crawford, the WBO champion. The reason I say this, even though Pacquiao avoided Crawford for years when they were both with Top Rank, is they're actually talking. They've been in talks about it. Crawford's confirmed that. I don't think Pacquiao's going to do it, but I do think he could. It's a big money fight. It's a big risk, but why not? You know, go for it. I just think Pacquiao sees other options as bigger options and maybe Crawford as a later option once these two guys maybe clean up the division a little bit more. So we'll see. But I would love to see it, and I really hope it happens. So personally, like I said, I think it's going to be Mikey Garcia. If he fights Mikey or Danny, I think he's going to beat either one of those guys by decisions. Could be very competitive fights, though. If he fights Spence or Crawford, I think he loses, but I think he does have chances in both those fights. So those are the 4 picks that I have that are on Pacquiao's radar. And this division moves around Pacquiao. They're orbiting around him. Whatever he does, then everybody else is going to fall into place. So we'll see. Next to number 2, and we still have a 2-way tie for first. First of those guys I'm talking about is Errol Spence Jr., the unified champion. He holds the IBF and the WBC belts. Excuse me. Errol Spence is lining himself up for most likely Danny Garcia, because most people feel, myself included, that Manny Pacquiao is going to choose Mikey Garcia. So I think Spence is going to get Danny. I think he's going to beat him by a decision, but I do think it's going to be very competitive. I'm looking forward to seeing how Spence bounces back after the accident last year and after over a year off. So we'll see how that goes. But that's what I think Spence is doing next, almost for sure. I do think he's an outside option for Manny Pacquiao, but I don't see that one happening. Other than that, I really couldn't tell you who I think he might fight if he doesn't get one of those two guys in the ring next. And then finally, it's Terrence Crawford, the undefeated WBO welterweight champion. He's still tied with Errol Spence for first. Crawford, you know, it was looking like for a while that Kell Brook was his top pick, and it still might be. Still might be the former champ Kell Brook. But Crawford has thrown other names out there. He's talked about negotiating things with Pacquiao, that's possible. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen, but I like that they're talking. Another option would be a showdown with Sean Porter. That's a fight I think you should push for the most, because it would make the most sense, and it would set a precedent between Top Rank and the PBC that they're willing to work together that could lead to bigger fights for Crawford later on. Porter's still a top 5 guy. This fight would be big. It would probably go down as Crawford's biggest win if he beats Porter. So I think it's a fight that needs to happen. I really hope it's one of those two, that it's Pacquiao or Porter. But I honestly don't think it will be. I honestly think he's probably going to have to settle for Kell Brook, and that's going to be what happens. So that's it, guys. I know this one went on, but it's about the number 1 division in boxing, so I think it's worth the time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. 2020 mid-year top 10s. We'll see you at the end of the year to discuss the top 10s and how it went. All right, True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.